Welcome, welcome. My name is Motombo, and and we are about to have a very short discussion. This is the If More Let's Divide podcast live edition, and as usual with my co-host Charlie Fred.
Yes, sir.
Introduce yourself.
Frederick. I'm a man.
That was a very brief introduction. Let's introduce our guest for tonight. And as usual, let's start with Lorraine. Kindly introduce yourself.
So hi everybody, good evening. My name is Lorraine H.L. Clue. I am the founder for the Shop Accra and La Gallery Accra and the Chocolate Cafe Accra.
Big gal.
Next, Sefa.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Sefa Gohoho Boatin, and I founded and I run the Untamed Empire.
Yeah. Next, Sydney.
Hi, I'm Sydney Fayose. I'm the operations manager and marketing promotion for Accra Art Week.
Bra. Give it up.
You know?
Last but not the least, Alan.
So, Ni Ake, otherwise known as Alan Kwabena Frimpong, co-founder of Zeal, and I'm also the visiting curator here at The Mix for A Divination of Enjoyment.
Give it up. Now, the very first question will go to you, of course. Why this event?
Why this event? Because through the relationships I've built with all of the wonderful, dope people on this panel, we wanted to celebrate what's happening for Accra Art Week and all of the wonderful creatives and cultural institutions that Accra has to offer. So that's really the relationships that we all have connected through friends, family. That's what connects us, and that's why we wanted to just at least have the time during the opening of this exhibition to showcase really the strength of us and our power and solidarity as creatives, as Black creatives.
And I hear this isn't the first.
Yeah, this is not the first. This is not the first. Actually, we had our first exhibition for this touring exhibition in Los Angeles.
Oh.
So we're bringing what we brought in Los Angeles to here to Accra.
Dope.
Yeah.
Fred.
Oh, for him?
No, for
I'm going straight to Lorraine, as I know her. So the shop is it's a huge space. I think as a creative, sometimes what you wonder is, how do you fund such a ambitious project? So maybe you can shed some light
funding
on,
is very important for artists here.
on
Ghana.
how you've been able to master the field.
Okay. So in regards to the Shop Accra has been in operation for the past 8 years. Predominantly, I think before COVID, it was all self-funded. I think it's something that, you know, when you're passionate about something, it's really hard for you to not implement whatever visions. So for myself, for example, I have multiple visions that will come to me. And if I don't act on it, it's almost like a nightmare. And I think one of the things that I had to do was to set up a space that, you know, allowed people to be able to have a platform to share whatever that they make, and also showcase it to, you know, fellow Ghanaians to be able to also patronize it. And so the shop was born at a space where I needed to really dedicate myself. And it's not just, you know, when you're building something like the Shop Accra, it's not just finance. It's the time, it's the energy. I don't know if some of you know, but I actually lived in the shop for 3 years.
Wow.
And I didn't step foot out of the shop for 3 years.
I have a really good
Give it
follow-up.
up. You have tried.
Yeah, she struggled.
Yeah.
So quick follow-up. It's easy for, I mean, the kind of community we have in society we have in Ghana. A woman out there busting your tail, making it happen. Everybody thinks there's some big man hiding in some corner, funding the thing. So can you please go a little bit more detailed into the self-funding?
Okay.
Just to encourage those who would like to, you know, follow the path that you've
Right.
blazed. Yeah.
So when I talk about self-funding, particularly with the Shop Accra experience, obviously Prior to that, I was in corporate, so I had obviously some savings. But when I say self-funding, it's being able to really identify some of the things you need. A lot of time, people think that, you need a huge amount of money to start a business. But when you're looking at building a community, what you need is a couple of resources. You need place. I call it the 4 Ps. So you need the purpose, which needs to be very clear and aligned. You need the place that this is supposed to happen, and you need the people. And then you need that problem-solving aspect of things. And eventually what happens is if you're able to get all these 4 things right, meaning that I could have set up the Shop Accra in Lagos and it wouldn't have worked out. And I did. Oh. But Accra seems to be the place. I think if you are able to get this formulation right, which is getting the right people on board, being at the right place, and also having the purpose very clearly defined, whatever you need comes in automatically through these resources in that sense. And I have to also add, timing is very important. Yeah. Because I've known so many people that have started great ideas, but the timing might not have been the right timing. And so being able to get all these 4 Ps and the T right, you're good.
Dope.
Nice. Thank you.
Sydney, so for those of us here who don't know about Accra Art Week, can you tell us a little bit about,
Okay, Accra Art Week actually started in Holland when I met my business partner, Edwin. So we even did a show for Amwako Boafo in Den Haag. Dope. And since the last 4 years, we've been actively in Ghana. So it's an art fair that we do once every year to promote and support upcoming artists and to showcase Ghanaian art also to the whole world. So we had a couple of activations in New York and also in LA. And we have more shows coming also next year outside Ghana to show the whole world that art in Ghana is borderless. And we have an Accra Art Week shows starting from next week also as well.
So you're all invited, Charlie.
You're always invited.
Yeah.
Show love.
And don't forget to come and check the National Museum of Ghana, because I heard that many people out here don't even know that there's a national museum.
A functioning museum,
here in Ghana, which is very active. So we have the Hip Hop at 50 exhibition going on at the National Museum on the 22nd. So come check it out as well.
Please do.
A quick follow-up. So Art Week, why isn't it a month, 2 weeks, a day, but that,
The week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 4-day programming, so we also focus on travel and tours as well, because there are great spaces outside Accra who are also actively busy, like Enchinchim Museum in Adan. So we curate experiences, bring people there. So that's why we celebrate the Art Week to make sure.
Lorraine said Accra is the place. My next question goes to Nii. My next question is for Nii. Lorraine said Accra is the place. The first, event was in LA. Aside from you being from here, why did you decide to have another version in Accra and not Lagos, not any other location but Accra?
Yeah, I mean, Lorraine said it, HR said it, it was the relationships, right? Mm-hmm. Because I first came here, I would say almost like 5-6 years ago, and given some turn of events, also we had the pandemic, and at the time my dad was ill, and so I actually came back here to do caregiving for my dad. Yeah. And coming from the States where healthcare is just crazy expensive and everything else, while I was here coordinating care with my sister, I was like, let me see what the art scene has to offer, since the art scene is not closed here, right? In New York City, you had galleries that were closing, people who were dying in hospitals, so it just wasn't an environment where people could explore art. People were in their houses, but when you came here, the art galleries were still open. So I got to meet Sefa through Danny Dunson, who was Zeal, the cooperative that I co-founded, our board chair. So one of our board chairs connected me to Sefa while I was here, and I got to do my first studio practice at Untamed Empire. That led to this exhibition happening, right? I met HR through Francis Kokoroko, who is actually in this exhibition. If it wasn't for Francis, Francis was the one who pushed me to do this exhibition and to start something here in Ghana. If it wasn't for me meeting Fritz Swa, who connected me to Sydney, we would have not collaborated to have Accra Art Week here for the exhibition.
Nice.
So given the plethora of relationships and connections here in Accra and the thriving of those relationships and really the trust, right? Because I'm from the States, you know, y'all just met me, right? But yet the trust was there and the solidarity was there because we see something in each other, I believe, and I think it's that solidarity that we see in each other as creatives because we know the power of creativity in building community and fostering community and making sure that we're all well together. So, you know, that's why Accra. There's a special thing about the creative ecosystem and the networks here in Accra that I find very special.
Yeah. Talking about community, Untamed Empire for years, you have been bringing people together through exhibitions, concerts, and all that. I've been at the location, the venue, so many times, and it's a dope space, very, very big. Why did you find the need to have that space? Like, it could have been anything. It could have been a playground, but you decided to, you know, have that dope space for art. Why?
Well, if I'm perfectly honest, it definitely was not planned. It wasn't the intention to be the size that it is. We started out very small in Northridge with a container made of 3 shipping containers, a nice little cube. It was a cute project. And then, unlike HR, I'm not as organized or diligent as you. We chose to grow by the values, right? So it was the values that drove us, and these values of collaboration, the values of general consensus, the values of listening and understanding the needs of the creatives, and it was those values that helped us to collaborate to grow. We really did not plan it. Just to tell you the story, after the very first container, a shipping company of all the people heard about us. They did a documentary about us. They thought it was really interesting what we were doing with young creatives. And then I was invited on a panel to speak in Geneva about inclusive development. While we were there, the whole story was why young people should be part of the story of developing a nation. And so I was very lucky because the 4th person on the panel was the global head of sustainability of Maersk. And so I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not an idiot. I'm here on the stage with this woman, right? And the moderator, the last question she asked all of us was, when you go back home to your country, what are you going to do to move your project forward? And so I pointed at her. She was sitting where you were sitting. I pointed at her and I said, well, on Monday, I'm going to call you. Because to be perfectly honest, the energy and the talent of the young people in Africa is so vast and so strong that it's pushing us and is putting pressure on us to grow this little cute project that I was doing. So we need more containers. And so that's how it happened.
Wow.
And it wasn't because, we strategized and we didn't have all the P's in place. But we just grew organically.
Dope. Fred?
Untamed Empire, that's the venue for, what's the name of that?
Manifestivities.
The other one, Dirty Ring.
There's
That's
Dirty
Mr.
Ring.
Easy, right?
Yes, Mr. Easy is one of the collaborators.
Oh, okay.
So he came and he did the first big event at Untamed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was lucky enough to observe the construction process of them building that space up to what it looks like. My question to you is, you said you started very small, not even thinking this is where you're going to go. How much more are you dreaming, knowing that you didn't expect to be here, but you're here? And now I want to know what your thoughts and vision is for the future.
Okay. Well, it's kind of like the divination of enjoyment, right? Where you kind of envision for the future the best that you can possibly envision. And I love how the sea is a reflection, because you kind of look at yourself and look at the people around you, your community, and you envision for them what they deserve, what they yearn for, and how they can self-actualize. And once that vision is there, for us as Untamed Empire, a space that is all about connection and connectivity, the opportunity for blockchain is really great for us, because now we've wanted to, and we've just launched a DAO, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. So now, and this is why nobody ever sees me, because Untamed has never been about any individual, right? It's about each person being the emperor of their own empire, being brave enough to be untamed, to promote or to create something wonderful, and then being able to do that and connecting with others so that you can amplify it. So now that there's this thing called a DAO, which is a blockchain-based organization where individuals of that DAO can earn voting rights based on how much you've contributed to the DAO. So for example, have you held an event at Untamed? So you obviously would have had some points, you know? Have you brought on any new creatives? That earns you some points. And based on those points, you can take decisions about Untamed Empire.
wow.
What direction we're going to move in, how we're going to grow as one unit. And that's what we're doing.
Very democratic.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you have to work for it. It's merit-based democracy.
Yes.
Not like the democracy we have.
Is it a democracy? You
Dope,
only
dope.
have two choices, but let's not talk about that.
Fred, do you want to go or should I go?
Oh, go.
Now let's talk about art. Shouts to Mama Ran. In the last few years, there has been a spike with exhibitions, galleries opening. Shouts to Isha, your space, La Gallery, having dope, exhibitions, through and through. There has been I might be wrong, but I feel there is a spike. Why is this, going on now? Why is it so now? Who would want to, pick this up?
I think now is the time. It's the time. I think the previous remarks I made in terms of being able to think a particular way, which I think.
I need to learn from that.
Sorry?
I need to learn from that.
I think it's very important to understand timing at any place in time. And Accra at the moment is experiencing what it's experiencing because I think we are able to align. The right people are coming in. So it's almost like an open gate. I don't know if you guys watch Stargate, but I am a product of it. And I know the importance of yes. And I know the importance of being able to actually see a gate open. And I think that's what has happened for Accra. And we all need to be able to take advantage of this because that gate doesn't stay open for long. We need to be able to harness it. We need to be able to nurture it. We need to be able to keep it as long open as possible. And the interesting thing is that we as a community has the most youth. It's very astonishing. A lot of people don't know this. And it's projected that by 2030, Africa will have 50% of the global youth.
Wow.
And most of us are visuals, and most of us are artists. And we need to be able to interject this and project this in the global world. And I think this is exactly what's happening with Accra. The gate has been opened, so we need to be able to harness it and really protect it and make sure that we are able to keep it as long as possible. And I have to also emphasize on this. Ghana in itself has this magical position to spike a lot of things, whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's fashion. We are always at the forefront. And I think what we've not been able to do in the past couple of decades, and I think maybe we have to really be observant and learn lessons from the past, is that we need to be able to really understand the time, the various different times and the opportunity it presents.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to harness it so that we can actually, protect it for other generations to come.
Nee, I would want you to take that same question, but wait, a follow-up. You said the gates won't be open for a long time.
Yeah.
2 questions. What will keep the gate open, and when do you think the gate will close?
So I think what would keep the gate open is the more people that actually entered the gate. So, it's interesting. We are connected by so many different people.
Yeah.
But we were all kind of like meant to, kind of like connect.
Yeah.
Because we're doing very similar things. And I think what's happening is there's a lot of people in the room that are doing so many similar things. They might be doing it in different spaces, and I think a lot of people were doing this in the diaspora and then really realized that, no, let me go back home and try doing exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And as a product of a diaspora, I can tell you for a fact that when I was out in Europe, for example, I always knew that there was a purpose, but I knew that it wasn't there.
Yeah, okay.
I knew that it was in Ghana. So I think in order for us to keep the gate open, we need to be able to, every single one of us needs to do the work. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. We need to be able to collaborate effectively. We need to be able to support each other, and I think that's what it's predominantly lacking in Accra. We need to be able to identify that we are in a space where we are able to really define where culture goes. Accra has and Ghana has a magical stand when it comes to that, whether politically and also in other spaces. So there's a lot of other African countries that look up to us. So we need to be able to really identify what it is that the role we're playing, and then harness that, meaning that everybody needs to be able to, there's a lot of creatives. So I do a lot of mentoring also for people to identify that, the creative scene is not just about, being an artist. There are digital means. At the moment as we speak, technology needs creatives more so than ever.
Yeah.
Doctors need designers to be able to create machines and other things. AI cannot evolve itself without creativity.
Yep.
And we have that as a resource.
Yeah.
It's better than gold. It's something that we inherently have it in us. It cannot be taken away, so we need to be able to really shine that out and harvest that and make sure that every single person's light is shining.
Yeah.
And then we can beam this
Dope.
place out of the world.
Dope.
Yeah.
Nee,
Yeah, I mean,
the spike.
the spike, I mean, disconnecting off of when we met again, the fact that Untamed Empire started a DAO, Zeal is the grandfather of that, right? So we have a co-op. So Zeal was founded as a co-op in the States. And so when I came here to Accra, the other people that I'm seeing, like Rania, I'm seeing you, but we met during the pandemic. And I remember somebody coming up to me and they said, oh, I've never seen this many art collectives before in a particular area. And I'm like, there must be something around the culture. Yes, there's around the collaboration, but the supports, like you just said, Lorraine, to be able to sustain those. And actually, I'm thinking about Esther, the conversation that we've had previously around what does it actually take to sustain collaboration and practice? And it takes that trust. And so when we did the studio, open studio at Untamed Empire during the pandemic for the exhibition, it took me as a conceptual artist practicing, right? It took me experimenting with the glass and breaking it a couple of times. It took me experimenting with different xylophones and going to the art market and doing some of the carvings myself. It took the 4 years to be in my own apprenticeship and to be in my own accompaniment journey with people here, and to learn from people here. And the learning from people here is what allowed for me to practice the level of cultural humility. I think it's really important. And it's those facets that are going to allow for the gates to not only be kept open, but structurally to stay open. Because we don't have to be reactionary to the global confines of what their imaginations are of us as a people globally. we can set the parameters of that as long as we keep those tenets near and dear to our hearts. And I feel like that's what this exhibition represents. It's the collaboration of art and artists. There are artists who came from art and artists into this exhibition. It was the studio Accra. It was all of these different relationships that allowed for us to really co-create a vision for what a divination of enjoyment was going to be. And knowing that the subject matter was going to be about reparations, we were like, well, why don't we use art and culture in a way through Anansi the Spider that can turn this on its head, and that we can think in a future-oriented way about reparations as equally as we think about the present and the past. You know, so that to me became key.
Dope.
So I hate to be the wet diaper. Sorry. Go ahead. But I will be.
No, but I really like what both of them have said, because ultimately it's about the young people with the energy that they have unleashing themselves, right? And understanding that they're, to some people, a new breed of African, where they know their place on the global stage, they know how to negotiate, and they know how to tell their stories in the way they want to. And I think that's going to make all the difference, you know, for Africa.
Awesome. Yeah, wet diaper time. So I love the energy. I love where we're heading. I love the exposure. I love the open door. I love all of it. And Mutombo's asking a very important question: how do you keep the doors open? My question is more about not even the doors, but what we are creating. Who owns it? Who owns our voices? Who owns our art? Who owns our creativity? How do we control it? Do we control it? Will we ever control it? Because capitalism, the beast that it is, transports everything that we create elsewhere. And ultimately, well, they own it. So how do we manage that? Anyone?
I'll start. So, as an economist, I can tell you how brands like LVMH became who they are. They basically own their markets and they own the ports, right? So they have their magazine and then they have their shops in the airports. And they've classified themselves. What we need to do, once we identify our value, is make sure that we are classified as such. So on the World Trade Organization's books, where you are choosing, okay, fabric from Ghana. Ghana is kente. Kente means this. Therefore, it should be minimum that price. We have to have that classification. Until we do, everybody will determine our value. We have to determine it. That's one thing. And then the second thing is that once that value is determined, we need to know how to keep producing and mass produce to a degree that we want to. You know, otherwise people are not going to make a living from some of their creativity. We also need to protect. We've had situations at Untamed where one graffiti artist has gone and he's painted a wall somewhere, and then some global water company has come and shot an ad right in front of the person's artwork. Free.
Buntu.
No credits, no nothing, right? Yeah. So they need to know that they have rights and they can protect themselves. The IP is very important. Your intellectual property is very, very important. You need to understand that. And I think those are some of the things that will help us. Yeah.
Well, yeah, what she said is very right. But when we are talking about ownership, I kind of feel like the whole Africa is kind of owned, not only through the arts, but with the natural resources as well. And why that happened is because there is no a balance in the whole creative industry. Because when I come to Ghana and I want to know, hey, how much does this piece cost? Or how much does your work cost? Someone might sell your work very cheap and someone might sell it very high. So how do we control the market so that we can be ownership of our own craft? Because the whole world, the whole natural resources is being owned already in Africa. So there's a big damage going on, which I think culture and identity also plays a very big role. Because first, knowing who we are as a people, what do we inherit, and then how do we make use of. So if we don't know who we are as a people, what we inherit as a people, how do we know how to own our own heritage?
Yeah.
Follow up. I'm frustrated, but I'll get the question out. So, the ideas, I guess, that we're speaking of, sometimes about knowing self and all of that, I don't know if it sheds enough of a light on the idea of competency, because there's the business side of the art industry.
Yeah.
That's entirely different from throwing the color onto the canvas. So I guess I'm more concerned about, there's so much influx, so quick, so fast. Do we have the time to sit and know that these are the structures in place, institutionalized, so that when you come in, you know these are the rules to follow? Right now it's a free-for-all, kind of. You waltz in, you get what you can, you roll out. But in the interest of the creatives, those that we're speaking about, how do we, or who are the ones who have the competency to take the time to sit down and say, no, we need to put an organization in place, we need to put a union in place, whatever name it takes on. But how do we approach that? Because I think it's very vital, personally. I don't know.
I will speak to my own experience just in terms of the collaboration here with the mix. And it's, to be clear, this exhibition took 4 years of ideating. So let's go through the creative value channel real quick. Creation, it took 4 years of ideation through practice, ideas, studio visits, building with artists, right? So the creation channel. Production, then we had to find who are the right producers to work with in Accra.
Yeah.
For someone who is from the States, and build those relationships. Then the sourcing of the resources, the money to bring in to source the exhibition and produce the materials for all of the artwork, right? So that all of the artists can be paid before their artwork is even done, meaning commissioned work, right? So we're talking art market and art world.
Yeah.
So then creation, production, distribution. Now we have to talk about the artwork being sold. Okay, and all of this takes practice. So I feel like, you know, to the question, we don't have a choice but to take the time to practice if we're not going to invest in ourselves to do so. And it may not be easy, but it's necessary. And so the time that it took to go through contracts and say, we want to make sure that artists are being paid equitably and that the mix can be taken care of, and Zeal, that is a cooperative that's sourcing their labor too, everybody can be taken care of. It took us 3 months to get there. And so it is worth it to make sure that it's done the way it needs to be done. And it may not be quick, it may not be fast, it may not be easy, but at the end, we can at least safeguard. And again, that's just one example that is probably a margin to what is probably dominant in terms of business practice. So we have to be honest. If we're not willing to do the work to ensure we are practicing solidarity in our business and the market differently, the market will stay the same, where we will extract and exploit each other. And we all have the stories, right, of IP and everything else. So, and again, I'm just one person who's having an initial experience, but I'm realizing in my experience, it really did take time. I could have said, okay, let's do this in 3-4 months, but also I didn't have the relationships. I didn't have the navigating of the networks, but also there was something that felt really important for me, running a co-op, to make sure that we had some democratic decision-making power amongst the artists in this show, and with the mix. All local institutions. So,
Dope, dope. Fred, should I go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Going back to what Aisha was saying earlier about the door being open, yeah, I do agree. The door is open, and we have some dope acts, you know, churning out good works, but most of them don't reach, one, their full potential, and two, they don't reach the global, you know, the market. Why are there a few people, like you mentioned Amwako Boafo, Serge is doing dope stuff. We have El Anatri who is, you know, doing dope. Why are there a few people, you know, going around, and to be honest with you, there are so many dope ones here, still stuck here. How do they go through the door and, you know, and go wide? Yeah.
Just to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
You then, Sefa.
Okay. So I think one of the most important things that I have observed in the art scene is the fact that um, we have two types of artists. We have the artists that understand the business aspect of things. So either they come from a background where they have some form of other disciplinary in regards to whether it's technology or business or so. And then there's the artist that is completely, a creative. And I think the difference you see is that most of the time when you are able to, and if as a creative, you do not necessarily have that exposure to other disciplinary, it's important to be able to acquire the skill of collaboration. And I think that has been the biggest issues. A lot of the artists that are not able to embark onto the next global level is because when you are at the global level, at the table, there's a lot of collaboration. You have to be able to work with more than 10 people. A lot of times, some of the artists want to remain in their shell. They want to be, known in their locality.
Local champion.
They don't want to, they have had bad experience, so they will stay away. But the important thing is that, even in business, you see that multiple people, the most successful people in business are the people that fail and get up and continue. Yep. And I think what's happening is that we have a lot of artists that, basically experience a certain experience and they harness that. And they are not able to break out of that shell and, try it again. Because if we were to look at some of the experiences, even Ilanochi, if you look at his story, he started off in Ghana and then ended up in Nigeria and now in the global scene. You have to be able to be explorative. You have to be able to open your mind, to be working with other people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be your field. You have to be able to, and collaboration is the future. So if you don't have a certain skill, we should be able to look at other people that can complement us. And I know it's easy said than done. A lot of artists basically, struggle with that. But I think we need to be able to incorporate that into the various different conversations. So for example, there are interesting, savvy business people who are interested in the arts. Yeah. But they are looking for creatives to work with. And interesting enough, you have creative that are looking for the business counterpart. Mm-hmm. And there's almost like there needs to be some form of navigation to bring them together. Yeah. And I think that's the sort of conversation that we need to start having in terms of really being able to bring both artists and other disciplinaries together and see how best we can move this forward. Yeah.
Okay. Who?
Yeah. So, just because we mentioned Elanatri, I'll talk about his story a little bit. Before Untamed Empire started, I had a family friend. Her name is Bisi Silva, and Auntie Bisi is a Nigerian lady who used to represent El when he was coming up. Yeah. And she bought a work of his for $1,000, and everyone here knows that his work is going for like $1.9 million and up now. Yeah. And that really taught me a lesson that we all kind of do have a role to play in promoting the local art. Because a lot of the artists here, not only do they lack resources and opportunities to experiment and showcase, and that's what we can help with at Untamed Empire, but we really do own our own ecosystem. And I mean that by saying that each and every one of you here today could be a collector of art. If you buy a local work, you help nurture that artist, you help support them to get access to the resources or the materials for their next piece, and that helps grow them. And once the work exists, then we can all celebrate and promote it, and sometimes it can be picked up. But until we own the ecosystem, until we grow the local ecosystem, we will always be waiting for some gallery somewhere to come and say, oh, this work is worth something. We have to own it ourselves. And so we started a collector circle to try and get younger people to start collecting and buying art so that can happen.
Your question was, how do we go global, right?
Yeah.
the artist can get an
Yeah.
international notification.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think some of the artists, like institutions, know that it's difficult to work with an artist because an artist is just a creative person, you know. But it has always been show business, so there is a business behind the show, and like an art piece can be nice, but the same art piece can be showcased at a gallery, expensive, and the same art piece can be at art center or on the street of
Yeah.
Osu for a price. We are
yeah.
talking about the same artworks.
Yeah.
So adding value to the art is also something different. But with the creatives, with my own experience, like working with a couple of creatives here, it's very difficult to navigate the way forward. Even building them a profile, like website, documenting their works, and this, they don't get it. So it makes it difficult because working with the global world or going international, you need to meet up to a certain standard. You have to be, your profile has to be out there. You have maybe to be on 1 or 2 platforms, but it's difficult because most of the artists here are just creatives, and it's difficult for them to collaborate and partner with institutions, art dealers, art galleries to go out there. So I think that's one of the challenges.
A question around the scale to which we want to have global impact and the kind of global impact that we want to express on a global stage. And so one of the things that I just have in mind in terms of my own experience in building out Zeal through a cooperative is, I think one of the many things that I think all the panelists have already mentioned is just the expansion of the market. And so we're talking about the galleries, but I found in Zeal's journey, there are also artists who have been placed in ads and brands. There are artists who have decided they've wanted to start mutual aid funds, given the sale of their artwork to support other artists in coming up.
Yeah.
There are other opportunities where artists that have been engaged in fashion brands. So the point I'm making is, yes, there's the traditional market of the galleries and the museums, and I think there's opportunities, especially because we're in Accra, to diversify that market with the multitude of talents. There are artists who are teaching artists. So I think there's something about the role and the function. You said it earlier. There's some artists who can actually manage. They can do the management side of things, but then there are artists who can't. So where do the incubators come into support? Where do the other cultural institutions come in to support with management and development? And where do we bring in our institutions, our educational institutions in that as well? So we have Kwame Nkrumah, obviously, but then there are others. So I think it comes back to this piece around the support and the connectedness of that support. How can we be stronger in that regard?
Yeah. Fred, before you go, guys, Fred and myself, we have a podcast called the If More Let's Divide podcast. If you don't know, now you know. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, everywhere. Do follow and check out our amazing conversations that we have on the podcast.
Yep.
Thank you, Fred.
So I have a 2-pronged question. How do you guys invest in dispelling the notion from creatives that they are going to be exploited? Because I think there's a prevalent notion simmering around, oh, that guy is a vulture, he's going to use you, he's going to take your money. So how do you educate the artist coming raw from the street, thinking that my art is so beautiful, it deserves 1.9 million, without knowing the work that goes on behind the scenes, the connections, the relationships, the platform it takes to get there? That's the first part of the question. And then the second part of the question, which was part of our prompts, is I think the value of our art currently relies so much on global interest. So if the global interest shifts, we're probably dead in the water. And is that a good or a bad thing? But my real question is, how do we make sure we're educating our own people culturally, like Sefa mentioned, to realize the value of art, to say that, you know what, something I bought $1,000 some years back is better than the inheritance of the house that you and your siblings will be fighting over when I'm dead in court for another 19 years and the roof is tearing off. How do you create a community where Ghanaians ourselves, Africans ourselves, realize the value of our art and then invest in it so that it's not so much at the whims of the Western lens?
I think that's the reason why like a space like the Shop Accra exists. It's really, for me, one of the key things was we need to be able to create markets on the continent to be able to really define how our resources is being used. You know, essentially, even with the new project I have with, which is the Chocolate Cafe, one of the things is that we have the commodity of cocoa for so many years, and we've not been able to integrate it into our culture. You know, we should have cocoa moments where, you know, just like people have cigarette moments or coffee moments, we should be able to say, okay, cocoa time, you know, that kind of thing. But I think it's, again, the time is now. We can look at the past and really identify what could have been done. And I think we need to be able to stay focused in the future and be able to really identify what can now be done. And I think being able to have platforms like Untamed Empire, La Gallery Accra, even Accra Art Week is really, all these platforms are harnessing and also encouraging us to have our own markets that will be able to, you know, redirect the consumer. There is an opportunity, there's a need, you know, and we need to be able to create all these institutions. And I would say that we actually need more institutions in order to validate our market, right? For art particularly, since opening the art gallery, La Gallery, I've noticed that a lot of people come in and they really want to understand why you would want to buy an art piece, you know? And I think we've really recognized that there is an educational process that needs to take place. We need to be able to, you know, reorganize our thoughts in terms of how we see ourselves and how we see the things that we are able to create from all the resources that we have around us. And by doing so, we create an alternative market that can coexist with the outside market. And it will not be entirely dependent. As I said, by 2030, Africa will have the most 50% of the youth in the world. So we have an opportunity to create whatever market that we want. We need to be able to really understand what timing we are in and really play the role.
Dope,
Yeah.
dope.
Awesome.
Before the last question, anyone got a question for anyone here?
Hi, I'm Maia. I've come here from Atlanta, Georgia. It's a long way, long way.
Welcome.
My question is, when it comes to being an artist, a lot of people don't necessarily want to call themselves an artist by not knowing what they want to focus in on, or education, or not feeling completely prepared. What would you say to people who are needing to be encouraged in choosing themselves, in choosing their art, and letting them know that their voices matter? What would you say to those?
Well, I mean, that's part of why Untamed Empire exists, right? You need to be bold enough, at the very least, to experiment. And that's what he did. He came in, our space is for that. Our space is a space where you can come and experiment, kind of test out different mediums, see how you like one over another, and then you graduate to spaces like La Gallery, you know, or the Shop Accra, where then you can start selling once you're comfortable and confident in who you are. So I really do see Untamed as like a bridge between, you know, the different parts of the market, the art market, should we say, because that's what you need, that spark. And once you have that spark, that's all you need.
Dope.
Yeah.
Sydney, you want to?
Oh, I think she answered the question.
Okay.
Perfect.
I will add, there's a book called The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. And
yes,
this was written quite a while ago. It's actually, I would say, a generation before us. And I think that book is directed to all of us because we were not born yet. And we need to be able to understand, you know, the time that we are in. And as a creative, I think as an African, the first thing that you should be able to, as a black African, or, the first thing that you should boldly be able to say that you're creative, because as we have resources all over our land, we also have resources inside of us. And that's the creativity part. And the most amazing thing is that if you really understand the dynamics of, let's say, technology, now, whoever that is in the forefront of technology at the moment does not own the resources. They would have to come to Africa in order to get that resources, whether it's lithium, whether it's, any of these resources, exactly.
Yeah.
Aside from that, we do also have the creativity we need. A lot of the inventions that we currently are using now have inherently people of our descent that, kind of like speared it. So we need to be able to understand that creativity is part of us. It's a resource that we cannot just, disencourage, as they do with some of the youth that we have. We need to be able to encourage that. And I think creativity can be sparked and can be uncovered at any age. You can be 50 and discover that you're an artist. And so for me, I think noting the book, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, I would say that if you're an artist, if you are not sure, you want to be able to identify yourself as such, you need to become the courageous one. You need to you need to identify yourself as one of the beautiful ones that are born now. Yeah.
Do you want to?
Yeah, and author for that book is Aikwe Arma.
Yeah.
So if you want to Google, write it down, follow all of his work, and one of the great literary giants here, just like you said, Lorraine. So I think honoring our elders and ancestors and the work that they've done and their study helps. I know for me, even as a conceptual artist and curator for this show, there's been a lot of study that I've done. As an artist, I also think because I'm a conceptual artist, I'm very involved in process. So I always ask people, what is your creative practice and how does it make you feel? And I've worked in philanthropy and I'm an urban planner. And so there are those stressful days where I'm just like, I don't got it. But I realized whenever I sketch, I sing, I compose, all those things make me feel good. And to me, that's what feeds the artist and the creative. And so I would say anybody who is dealing, whether it's with imposter syndrome, which I always say is complete BS, given all of what goes on in the world, if we're able to affirm ourselves and find people who will affirm us and find that community, we'll be good. We'll be good. We'll be all right. Like Kendrick Lamar says, we're going to be all right. So that's how I feel about it. When I think, I was speaking with Skep, one of our artists in the show, about just our upbringings when I met up with him and Kweku, and we were like, oh, when I was growing up, I saw you don't realize it, but I saw masks and I saw bows and arrows, and then later in life, oh, that's from the Akan people. This is from, so I'm like, oh, well, my parents are from the Ashanti and also Ghana, So when I look at my parents' upbringing and all of those artifacts that my dad brought to the States that I saw in my house, implicitly as a child, those things are feeding you. It's information. So, in many ways, when I talk to my parents now, they're like, oh, you were always sketching as a child. You were always doodling and then drawing crayon on the wall, and then, I get beat for that. But, looking back at it, it's all of those moments that make us happy, that bring us to those childhood moments that can actually support us in our own healing and affirmation of who we are.
Dope, dope, dope. And that brings us to the end, but this isn't the end. This is the end
of the talking.
Of the podcast,
Yeah.
the live podcast. For Untamed Empire, lots of events going on, this month, manifestivities, Dirty Rave. Yeah. La Gallery, you guys should check La Gallery out, clean space, amazing, stuff going on there. Accra Art Week is on when?
Yeah, from the 20th to the 24th of December.
Yeah, dope. So you guys should, be there. And this is happening now. We thank you and please follow the podcast. Please follow
If more,
let's divide.
let's
We are everywhere. Follow the podcast. And we thank you for listening.
Yes. We thank you and feel free to continue to network, build. We're going to start the rest of the programming for the exhibition. Feel free to get drinks, there's snacks, there's food. There'll be an upcoming performance just in a couple of minutes, so
Yes.
stay tuned.
Brah.
All right.
Yes, sir.